Good evening, everyone joining us here in person at the Cambridge Street Upper School and online. I'm Joshua Miller. I'm the Cambridge and Somerville editor at the Boston Globe, and we're excited to host this community conversation with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Before we begin, a special thank you to Cambridge Public Schools, Cambridge Superintendent David Murphy, Chief Operating Officer Damon Smith, and the whole team that made it possible for us to be here in this space, including the janitorial folks. Thank you to Roy Contreras for staying late to make it possible to be in this space. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. And thank you as well to the hundreds of people across the 7th Congressional District who wrote in with questions for the Congresswoman, to folks in Boston and Cambridge and Somerville and Everett and Randolph and beyond. I want to talk tonight about who you are, about how we got to this moment, and about where we go from here. And some people know you, some of the audience are familiar with you and know your life story, and others have just seen clips of you on Instagram or on TV and don't know your history. So I'm wondering, because I think it's helpful for people to know where an elected representative came from, to understand why they make the decisions they do, if you'd be willing to tell us a little bit about your biography. We're in a school. Where did you go to school and where did you grow up?
All right. Mic check, mic check. First, before I say anything, I just want to say, damn, it feels good to be home. And not only in the Massachusetts 7th, not only in Cambridge, but to be with what I consider you all to be, which is movement family. And that actually is where my story begins. I grew up raised in a single-parented household with the righteous role modeling of a mother who was a proud Democrat, a super voter. Just to give you a little insight into my upbringing, my mother never read me stories about anyone coming to save me. She read me the speeches of Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm. So I get it honest. And she, taught me early on, that to be Black is something beautiful and to be proud of, but that I was being born into a struggle. And she had an expectation that I would do my part in that struggle in the work of liberation for Black and all marginalized people. I distinctly recall, this is pre my my alopecia status, rocking my melanated crown many years ago when I still, had hair. And the beauty salon is just a huge part of our culture and community. And I was sitting atop telephone books, holding one ear while my hair was being straightened by a hot iron. And I was reading a book. I'm a voracious reader and was always known for sort of having my face in a book. And the beautician was doing that thing that adults do around kids, which is to talk about you, but like you're not there. And so she asked us, someone in the salon, she said, this child, always looks so worried. What is this child worried about? And I just looked up and I said, the world. And I was 9 or 10. So I would just say that not much has changed. So for those of you that have that debate about nature versus nurture, I came out like this. And I had a mother who nurtured that activism. I worked on my very first electoral campaign at the age of 10 to help elect the first Black mayor in the city of Chicago, Harold Washington, a huge influence on my life. If you don't know who that is, please study him. Two other quick things I would say that really inform the work that I do from my origin story. So I grew up on public transportation. It's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about transit justice. It truly is at the intersection of everything. My father is a brilliant man who battled substance use disorder and a heroin addiction and cycled in and out of the criminal legal system. And it was incredibly destabilizing. And there was great shame and stigma that I carried about that, not understanding at the time that it was a disease. But my father, while incarcerated, attained 2 advanced degrees, came out, attained his PhD, and went on to become a college professor, a dean of a college, and a published author. And so by my father's example, That is why I'm so passionate about family reunification and those bonds and reentry programs and second chance Pell Grants, recognizing that there are so many brilliant people whose gifts are dying on the vine, that are unjustly incarcerated, because my father should have been met with culturally competent, on demand care, not incarceration. And now, as for my mother, in addition to the ways in which she poured into me, reading the speeches of Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm, being a tenants' rights organizer through the Urban League of Chicago, I also had an incredible education with a front row seat into the indignities and injustices that my mother experienced as a Black woman. And because I'm an only child, and it was really just sort of me and my mom versus the world, it takes a lot of children. They have to grow up and become an adult to see the humanity in their parent. I was there for my mother's heartbreaks. I was there for her hardship. I was a latchkey kid, home alone, as young as 5 years old. And she would say, "You cannot tell anyone you were here alone because they will take you away from me." But she couldn't afford childcare, right? I was also there when my mother was battling uterine fibroids, and the healthcare system would delegitimize her pain. She was forced into a radical hysterectomy when she did not need it. And I also remember the day she collapsed on the street because she returned to work too early and had not fully recovered. And so I saw the ways in which a broken government and broken systems and policy violence were showing up in my mother's life every day. So as far as my education, your parents are your first teacher. And so both through the consciousness of my parents and through the landscape that they navigated, I received an incredible education.
Tell us a little bit.
Clap for my mama and my daddy. What's wrong with y'all? You better clap for Sandy and Martin. May she rest in peace and power. That's the one other thing I would say. I was my mother's caregiver in her long-standing leukemia battle. She transitioned at the age little over 60, far too young, about 13 years ago. But this is also why I'm so passionate about paid leave and supporting caregivers, because at some point in our lives, we will all need to be cared for or to care for someone.
Tell us how you got from there. From there in Chicago to BU and eventually into politics. Help draw that line for people who don't know.
Okay. Well, first, let me just say, at the time when I came to Boston, the Red Sox were still losing. So I was coming from a tradition of cheering for the Cubs my whole life, and then came here to cheer on another incredible baseball team. So I came here for school. I'll date myself because I think I look all right for 51. I came here in I came here in 1992 to attend Boston University. So school is what brought me here. I like to say Chicago is a city that raised me, and Boston is a city that changed me. It was in Boston that I sort of better crystallized my purpose, the contribution I wanted to make in the world. And I was very active on campus, student government president of my college. And then I earned, I'll tell this story quickly. So I was charged with organizing a Martin Luther King Day celebration at Boston University. It was called a day on, not off, because it always bothered me that people treated it as an extended weekend. And because I had seen how many people worked for so long to make that a holiday. And so I said, I'm going to invite Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II and Congressman Barney Frank to this event. And I said, I'm an Aquarius, so I'm really into manifestation. And I said, and then I am going to get an internship with one of them, okay? And so they both came into the room, and I'm just going to tell the truth because I've said it to his face. Barney Frank scared the shit out of me. He was a complete curmudgeon. I just was like, he's brilliant. I love everything he's doing on banking. That's a no-go. Okay. And so, Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy II greeted me with a hiya pal, and I said, "This is the way I'm going." And my mother, who was very politically astute, had taught me all the work that Congressman Kennedy was doing on redlining. And so I approached him and I said, "I'd like to intern in your office." I secured this internship in his Roxbury satellite office. I showed up with a briefcase from Goodwill that was permanently locked. I never figured out that combination, but I thought it important to look the part. Ladies, do y'all remember a store called Hit or Miss? Okay, so I went to Hit or Miss, got my first little work suit situation, walked in with that permanently locked attache case, landed that internship, and that internship changed the trajectory of my life. Now, I should say at that time, internships were unpaid. And most interns were the kids of donors. And so I'm so grateful that we have now, through a lot of organizing, changed that to open it up so there's no gatekeeping and all of our interns are paid a living wage. So I was a student at Boston University, started as an intern for Congressman Kennedy. Ultimately, I was hired and I became a constituent services Social Security liaison, advocating for our most vulnerable, our seniors, our veterans. Then I went on to work for United States Senator John Kerry for 11 years. And then served on the Boston City Council for 8 years. So I know the media likes to present the most palatable narrative possible, and some people think I just fell out the sky and was a congresswoman. But I get it honest. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this, and have been doing this work of electoral politics and movement building, the work of freedom that my mother demanded of me for a very long time. So thank you to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for changing my life. And although he's on his way here, I do think it's important to say this because you need to see my humanity too. It is also here where I found the love of my life. Who is from Cambridge. So thank you, Cambridge, for the gift of my fine ass husband. But it was here that I found the love of my life, put down roots, grew a family as well.
So you've been a member of Congress now for 6 years.
Yes.
And this is not your first time as a progressive Democratic representative during a Trump administration.
True.
But a lot more of the country voted for him this time around. And even in your district, one of the very most progressive, he did better last year than in 2020. Why do you think Donald Trump picked up more votes here and across the country in just about every group with voters knowing who he is?
Okay, the reason why this isn't an easy question is because we don't all agree about why we lost, okay? So what I see happening in real time and I worry about is that Democrats will reflexively say, you know what? We need to moderate our aspirations. They'll buy into this shallow punditry that we lost on social issues. I reject that categorically. First of all, I'm sharing the stage with you, so I'm not going to couch this or nuance this. I believe we lost because it was more important to a lot of people to preserve white supremacy. And also, they were very skilled at advancing othering and a scarcity mindset. And so people knew that harm would come if they believed even a third of what was laid out in Project 2025, which was not a blueprint. It is a playbook, which we see playing out in real time, but they just thought that they would be exempt from the harm. And then I imagine there are people who believed what he told them, that he was going to lower the cost of prescription drugs and groceries and housing. So for people who did vote for Trump, I know no one gave him a mandate to operate with what I would consider the godlessness, the lawlessness, and the callousness that he is in this moment. No one gave him that mandate. And then I'm going to say another reason why I believe he won and we lost. Democrats and we need to remedy this quickly, in my opinion, are afraid of power. And when you operate with scared power, it's like having no power at all. We have had the House, we have had the Senate, we have had the White House, and we reserved the filibuster. We did not restore voting rights. We did not pass George Floyd justice and policing, and so many other things, that I could name. Donald Trump, even if he is just about moving fast and breaking things, he is transparent about the fact that he wants the power. He wants to amass the power. He wants to wield the power. He wants to manipulate, abuse, and exploit the power. But he wants the power. And in order for us to effectively rebuild this party and this coalition of voters, we have to also offer an affirmative. So that I have to say, we need to come back home and let's rebuild this party, because we need to get the gavel. We need to be back in power, because when we have the power, we are going to do what? Right? So I think, I know, Democrats have always had the better policies. We know that we have a messaging problem. The Republicans have played the long game of building a mass communications ecosystem that they have put money behind. They had a long game of not just the Supreme Court that they've enlisted as co-conspirators in their extremist march, but they also went after federal judgeships, district judgeships. And so, to quote my brilliant chief of staff, Sarah Grow, Democrats don't need any more policies, we need more strategy. And she's very humble, so she doesn't want me to point her out. But I will say, give it up to my entire A team. That's a lot of my staff over there from Washington and in district. Okay, I have to say, this is a former staffer. Let me just brag on my team for a minute, because we did win the Democracy Award out of all members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, for being the best office when constituent accessibility and accountability. And I'm so proud and thankful to them for the personal sacrifices that they make. So yeah, I think we have to be unapologetic in the pursuit of power. And this is not the time to moderate our aspirations. This is not the time to play small. Democrats win when we deliver, when people feel the impact of our policies, not because they read it in a press release, but because their life is improved by a permanent child tax credit, by affordable and accessible child care, by access to fresh and healthy foods. Democrats win when you feel the impact of our policies. So in my mind, we should go as far and as deep as the hurt. This is not the time to moderate. And then finally, I'll say, in this moment, as I try to distill a path forward, I find it helpful to look back and to look at movements and to look at earlier chapters in the civil rights movement, which we are still very much in, to be clear. And what I have gleaned from studying those earlier chapters in the civil rights movement is that every movement needs three things. You need imagination. So we're doing radical work, but you need a radical dream. You need a North Star. Secondly, strategy. So you need imagination, you need strategy, and here's the hard one, stamina. You need stamina. So, I mean, those are just some of the things that I've been reflecting on.
You mentioned Democratic messaging falling short. I know Vice President Harris spent $1.5 billion in just 15 weeks and did not win a single swing state. And I'm wondering if you could give me your thoughts on why her message didn't work. What about it didn't connect enough to move the needle in even one of those states?
Okay, well, let me just say that I was, very proud to traverse this country on behalf of the Harris Walls ticket. I do believe that given a 100+ day campaign, that it was an extraordinary campaign. And we had an extraordinary candidate. I was in many battleground states, and I was encouraged by a lot of the momentum that I saw there. I did see a coalition coming together. I'm not sure what happened, but it is clear that people did not see enough of a distinction between Kamala and Tim and Trump and Vance. I mean, it's wild, but it should have been the contrast. I believe could not be more stark. I mean, look, Republicans like to talk a game about family values and freedom, but their agenda is an anti-freedom agenda. The Democrats actually have the freedom agenda because we're about your bodily autonomy. We're about your reading the books that you want to read. We're about your accessing the free press. The Republicans have an anti-freedom agenda. They want to control what words you use. They want to control your body. They want to ban books. They seek to control every aspect of your life. So the contrast could not be starker or more clear. And it is devastating that more people did not get that. And I don't want to conjecture too much about.
No, please do. Please do.
Well, I think, let me give two examples here. One of the reasons why I walked out of the joint address of Congress is because this ain't normal. And we cannot move and conduct ourselves with business as usual. Their rhetoric is hitting different. Their policies are hitting different. So we have to move differently. And as someone who's been in Congress now almost 7 years, I've never walked out of a joint address of Congress or a State of the Union. And that includes the first Trump occupancy. But on this one, I had to, because he had returned to the scene of a crime, a chamber that had been violated and desecrated by January 6th insurrectionists that he pardoned. Here is someone who has no respect for the rule of law, co-equal branch of government, Congress's constitutional power of the purse. And so I couldn't stay there, right? Okay. Now, this isn't normal, so I couldn't act normally. I think with this second Trump run, there was this watering down, this normalizing, where people just said, this is Trump and his bluster. You know, this is what he does. And so when you saw Project 2025, again, not a blueprint, a playbook, a literal playbook for wholesale harm, people didn't believe it. I mean, because that was central to our convention messaging. I was a co-founder of the Stop Project 2025 task force. We had hearings about this to say our defense of this is to ensure that Donald Trump is not elected to a second term, because it has been my experience that these extremist Republicans do not make threats, they make promises. So we had every reason to believe they would make good on all those things, but I think people just didn't believe it because people were desensitized to the showman and the bluster of Trump, that they just didn't believe. And I say this, I have family members who voted for Trump. And they voted for him because they were impacted by the othering messaging. They voted for him because.
What do you mean by the othering messaging? What was the othering messaging that impacted your family?
Well, I don't want to,
that impacted people you know.
People I know. Again, the othering, the nativism. I co-chair the House Haiti Caucus. I represent the third largest Haitian diaspora in the country. If you are 10 toes down saying that Black lives matter, that includes Haitian lives. And what I saw was, within our most marginalized communities, a nativism sort of messaging that was contributing to a othering and a scarcity mindset, where people believed that if there were fewer Haitian migrants, then I would have that housing, I would have that job. So again, they perpetuated that othering, that scarcity mindset. And Trump just flat out lied and said he was going to lower costs. So again, I don't think anyone, with rare exception, that voted for Trump gave him a mandate, did so with the expectation that we would be looking down at a $880 billion cuts to essential services that are essential to how everyone lives their lives.
I think that's a good opportunity for us to start turning towards where we go from here.
Yeah, I thought I'd give you a segue.
Just in the last few days, thank you, Congresswoman. Yeah. Just in the last few days, the administration seemingly defied a direct federal court order. President Trump called for the judge's impeachment. He said he no longer considers some pardons issued by Joe Biden to be valid. Definitely pressure testing the system in a big way. And I'm wondering, because your constituent asks, what can you substantively do as a member of Congress in the minority party in a not seeming to be so co-equal branch of government?
In the face of all of it?
What can you do? And what are you doing?
In the face of all of it.
In the face of
not a specific.
Yes, in the face of all of it, or in the face of this specifically, either one.
Yeah. Fight like hell. I keep returning to the words of Cecile Richards, daughter of the great Ann Richards, governor of Texas, leader of Planned Parenthood. I co-chair the House's Reproductive Freedom Caucus. And when she was in the throes of her cancer fight, she was still out there organizing and fighting. And people said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "There will come a time where the question will be asked, what did you do when everything was at stake for the country?" And she said, "The only acceptable answer will be everything that I could." And so I keep returning to that. Because the strategy of this hostile White House administration in the midst of an active hostile government takeover is to overwhelm. It is to shock and awe. It is to get you to believe that these proposals, most of which are lawless, are inevitable. And in that overwhelm, that you will concede and that you will be resigned to a mindset of indifference and of inaction. That is the strategy. When we say that their strategy is to flood the zone, that is why these executive orders are coming out fast and furious. They mean to overwhelm us. They mean to suppress any organizing. They mean to suppress any outcry or resistance, which is why Donald Trump has now instructed them to not even do town halls. So as part of our strategy, what's happening now? Democrats are doing town halls in Republican districts to say that I will come here and be accountable to you, be accessible to you. But the Republicans, it bothers me because people keep asking me, do you see any opportunities for bipartisanship? Are we in the same reality? Where is there a party for bipartisanship? They are operating, Republicans in the House, as cowards, complicit cowards in wholesale harm to our shared constituents. They are operating as a cult. So, no, I don't see any opportunities. So we have to, because people that define government efficiency by making people hungrier, poorer, and sicker are not my kind of people. So,
Congresswoman.
And so the Democrats, our defensive strategy is litigation, which we are winning a number of court cases. The second is legislation. So you take, for example, Elon Musk, unelected billionaire, his little grubby hands all over our data. We introduced the Taxpayer Data Protection Act. We just need 3 Republicans and we can move legislation. Their majority in the House is just 2 Republicans. So we're just appealing to them as people of conscience. Do the right thing by the people who elected you and not operate with this fealty and loyalty to Donald Trump and cowering under his politics of retribution. So our our strategy is litigation, which again, we're winning a number of the cases, our defensive strategy, legislation, and agitation, and organizing. And as a member of the Committee on Oversight and Reform, I've been conducting real-time oversight by showing up and resisting and agitating in the face of these dangerous and draconian proposals, from dismantling our federal agencies to the unjust massive firing of our dedicated federal workers.
Just so I'm understanding what you're saying, you made a lot of news battling the committee chairman about 2 weeks ago. You were trying to read the title of an article you wanted to put in the record. The reason you did that and the tangible result is?
Okay. Well, let me just clarify a couple of things. I was not battling anyone. What I was
He was battling you.
Okay. Well,
Someone was battling.
Well, whatever
someone.
he was doing was unjustified and disrespectful. And I would never want my daughter to think that that is acceptable, because I was completely within my right. For those of you who did not see it, there was a hearing on sanctuary cities. Mayors from New York, Chicago, Colorado, is it Denver? Denver and Boston were invited respectively to come before our committee. And my colleagues across the aisle were doing their xenophobic fear mongering and, saying that immigrants are all rapists and criminals. And I took issue with this in that I am a survivor of sexual assault. And so I wanted to enter into the official record an article from courts out of Texas with data that supported that actually US-born citizens commit more sexual assault than immigrants. And he would not allow me to enter these articles into the record. So listen, as I said, y'all, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I've been in Congress almost 7 years, but I was an aide for 16. I know policies and procedures. I'm a little I institutionalist, so I believe in and respect decorum and protocols and procedures, and I was within my right. And what he was trying to do was to silence me. And I thought his demonstration was disgraceful. And I do want an apology. But just so you know, what I was trying to accomplish was just simply to combat their xenophobia, their fear mongering, and to counter that with substantive facts and data. But he would not support the protocols of committee and allow me to enter the article into the record. So that is what happened there. So all I was trying to do was to get the facts out there, because this is the thing that Democrats are up against in this moment. We have to make the truth more compelling than a lie. That is the challenge before us in this moment. And all I was trying to do was to get the truth out.
But I'm trying to understand the strategy here, and this is part of your strategy that you said at the top was to fight like hell.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
I want to talk about Democrats who seem very split. Speaking of fight like hell, who seem very split between the House and the Senate these days, between the vanguard and the old guard. Why is there this split? And which of these two constituencies do you think will win out? And the context for this is the Senate passed a government funding bill that every single Democratic representative but one voted against.
In the House.
In the House, excuse me, in the House, and the Senate, Chuck Schumer.
8.
I'll let you describe what happened and how you see it.
Does anyone know what the word trifling means? It was trifling. It was outrageous. It was a betrayal. And this goes right back to the point I was making earlier, that when Democrats have the power, no matter how limiting your tools are, in this moment, you have to leverage and exhaust every single one of them, because the American people are exhausted and we need to be exhaustive. The reason why there isn't a narrative that the Democrats are out there fighting like hell is exactly because of reasons like that. Chuck Schumer stood with me and others in front of the Department of Treasury for a agitation, a mobilization effort, and linked arms with us and said, "We will win." Not like that, Chuck. No, we won't. No, we won't. So again, the other thing is that they presented a false narrative that there were two options. This Republican manufactured shutdown, because that's exactly what it was. They're the reasons we were on the brink of a shutdown, which no one wanted. Or this dangerous spending bill that is going to be a tsunami of hurt that everyone is going to feel. And that's inaccurate. That was a false choice, because the Democrats had a 30-day stopgap spending bill that was on the table that we were ready to vote for.
So you think Democrats had leverage that they did not use?
Absolutely. And I don't know how you win any fight when you started out by ceding ground. And so, but I want you to know, this is what I mean, because I hold myself accountable. When we were starting, we were at our Democratic retreat when this vote was going down, or hours before it. And I was on the phone, myself and my colleagues, we were calling Democratic senators and saying, hold the line. I went on television and appealed to them as well. And I said, if you don't want to listen to me, listen to your constituents. Listen to the appeals and cries of your constituents. Y'all, the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District, again, is an incredible district and one of the most unequal in the country. I have 220,000 Medicaid recipients in my district. 30% of the people in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are Medicaid recipients. So this is a denial of health care. People will get sicker and people will die. I'm not being hyperbolic. Those are the facts. So you're supposed to do everything. So I hold myself accountable to that standard as well, not just for my colleagues, not just for my movement siblings, but we stayed working the phones until the very end. And
why weren't you able to convince enough of them?
A great bit. Well, first, I didn't reach any of them. So welcome to organizing. But even though I knew the it would be challenging, I mean, they were being besieged by calls. So, but I still sent my text messages, left my voicemails, made it plain that I was, trying to reach them and just asking them to hold the line. To hold the line in defense of our values, to hold the line in defense of our shared constituents, to do everything to stop the tsunami of hurt. So again, the problem is that there was a false narrative that was presented, that the choice was between this Republican ripoff to cause harm to the people of this country, to pad the pockets of billionaires, or this Republican manufactured shutdown. And that's not true. I'm very unhappy and very worried about the fallout of this. Now, you asked about the generational divide and that kind of thing. So two things. Again, I worked for Senator John Kerry 11 years. John Kerry was best friends with John McCain. This is not your grandmama's Republican Party. And I think that there are some Democrats that are still stuck in an old frame of bipartisanship being the goal. And I'm not adult. I understand the legislative process and why we need some of them. Again, appealing to people of conscience. I will sit at the table and work with anyone who is serious about progress and about the safety, the preservation, and the health of our shared constituents. But so far, they have proven that they are unserious. Bipartisanship is not the goal. The goal is justice. The goal is impact. And There are some people, again, in their punditry and analysis of the election outcome, who have said the country sent a message that they want to see bipartisanship. Well, again, I reject that. But let's say that were true. That was a partisan, bad faith spending bill. The Democrats had no input on that. And that's exactly why it should have been stopped and rejected while we continued the work of negotiating for a bipartisan compromise. So I want to say that there are some Democrats that are stuck in an old frame. And then secondly, I ran for Congress because and was elected under Trump's first occupancy. And I ran because I felt the time demanded activist leadership, that it was not going to be enough to just vote the right way, that we were going to have to agitate, we were going to have to organize, we were going to have to resist. And that's the moment we find ourselves in now.
Who's the leader of the Democratic Party today?
Y'all. Depends on how you define leadership. I mean, honestly, I think everyone in this room is a leader, and they are the movement, and they are the party. So
I guess more you're describing a Democratic Party that is different than the one that clearly Minority Leader Chuck Schumer sees. Who is going to be the person to help figure out which way the party moves forward?
Well, I believe in cooperative governing. I promise you this isn't a pivot, okay? So
We'll see.
I do believe in cooperative governing, so I want you to know the power of each and every one of you, and I still want you to cling to that, because again, they want you to believe that you're powerless, right? There was public outcry about the unjust, lawless mass firing of federal workers. There was public outcry about the freezes to federal money that Congress had already voted on and appropriated. And that outcry, married with the courts, is why we have now seen probationary federal workers reinstated, is why those freezes were paused, okay? So I just offer that to say that in my opinion, the leader is whoever takes their cues from the people. I've always believed that, and I think that's why I'm in this seat, because I know where the real power lies, and it is in this movement, and it is in each and every one of you. So I'm paying attention to who's listening, and I would also say, as disappointed as I am by the complicitness of those Senate Democrats in that bad faith partisan spending bill, we have a moment to learn the lesson and apply the lesson because of the outcry in response to that. And so we have an opportunity to course correct. And I'm going to push us to do exactly that.
We got 37 pages worth of constituent questions from your constituents.
God.
So I want to get to a few of them.
Okay.
And a big theme of them, of the hundreds of questions that came in, was that people are scared and they're angry and they're looking to you asking, what can they do to push back? What specifically can they do? People wrote in and said they used to feel like they could call their representative, they could call their senator, and it would make a difference. They don't believe that anymore. What can they do to push back?
Okay, first, I never want to dissuade you from calling, because even when you feel that it's not impactful, it is. And I think you should call in two ways. First, if you reject something that we're doing, make it known. But this is the part that doesn't always happen, right, Mike? If you agree with something we're doing, affirm that. Because when you do that, it fortifies that member to continue taking those stances and doing those things, and other colleagues take note, okay? So I want to encourage you to both express what you disagree with, but also affirm what you do agree with. Then educate yourself. There's so much mis and disinformation. And again, they've got an anti-freedom agenda. They want to control what you read, what media you access. They want to perpetuate lies and propaganda. So educate yourself. That is huge, because the country is getting a civics lesson on steroids in real time. The fear that you talk about, the fear that I hear from constituents who are telling their child what to do if they come home and they're not there, whose house they should go to instead, elders that are carrying all their medications around in case they are deported, people afraid to go to medical appointments, to work, their places of worship, children not going to school. The fear is palpable, it is real, and it is justifiable. And even when these lawless executive actions have been introduced and they've been beaten back, there's still a chilling effect. So even if that executive action does not become law, people are moving as if it is. And so that's why educating yourself is so very important. If you're not already on my newsletter list, make sure you sign up so you can be in the know about coffees, teletown halls, convenings such as this. We've been doing Know Your Rights convenings, partnering with community-based organizations and nonprofits throughout the district on everything from disability rights and justice to LGBTQ to immigrant to housing. Because again, when you see the dismantling and defunding of diversity, equity, and inclusion, people think that's just about workforce. It's about programming and policies. It's about research. It's going to have incredible impacts on higher education, on healthcare, on our nonprofit communities, on education, on civil rights protections, on fair housing laws, right? So we've been partnering with a number of our groups around those Know Your Rights. So the first is keep calling. Let us know what you reject and don't like. Affirm what you do. Secondly, inform yourself so that you can inform others and be an ambassador in this moment, because we have to combat the mis and disinformation so people are very clear about what is law, what is real, and what isn't. Again, we have to make the truth more compelling than the lies. The third thing is I keep returning to the pandemic and the things that we stood up in that moment: infrastructure, mutual aid, rapid response. These are the sorts of things that we need to stand up in this time. Get to know your neighbors. Dr. King posed that urgent question in one of his final writings: where do we go from here, chaos or community? Well, we're in a moment of chaos, cruelty, and callousness, and we have to choose community every single time, to fortify ourselves, to strategize, to take care of one another, mutual aid. I'll give one concrete example on reproductive rights and freedom. Stockpile plan B. I'm so grateful for our Attorney General and our governor that when Roe fell, they had a whole of government response, right? We have to have a whole of community response. So stockpile plan B. Let people know in your chat group that you have it. This is the sort, and support abortion funds that support those. Even though we have Roe here in Massachusetts, there are people traveling from other states, and they need to be able to access those funds and those resources. So those are some of the things I would offer, sort of at a macro, but also at a micro.
Thank you. I'd love to get to some more of your constituent questions. Gabe from Somerville says he strongly supports the policy positions of Senators Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, but thinks the fact that they're in their 70s, 78 in Markey's case, is a huge barrier to successfully connecting with younger voters. And he wonders when a new generation of Democrats will take the mantle of statewide leadership. He asks, are you considering running for Senate in 2026, even if it means challenging Senator Markey?
Stand up. Who asked that question? Make yourself known. Listen, right now I'm focused on what I need to be, and that is the fights that are immediately in front of us. I think, there's plenty of time. I'll let you all and the person that asked the question do the work of conjecture and punditry. But right now, I have to be focused on the fights that are immediately in front of us, and that's what I'm doing.
One follow-up. He was first sworn into elected office more than 52 years ago, which was before you were born. I'm wondering, do you think Senator Markey has what it takes to connect with the raw fear and fury among Democratic voters today?
Well, listen, I am honored and never would have imagined as an aide decades ago that I would be in elected office and in this delegation. This is one of the most powerful, respected, impactful delegations in the country. And when I travel this country, I am always met with gratitude for the fight of both of our senators.
Not sure I heard an answer to the question there, but there's time yet. There's time yet. I want to get to
answer.
some more of the specific issues that constituents are asking about.
Okay.
We're here in a school. The president is dismantling the Department of Education. He says it's so states, instead of bureaucrats working in Washington, can run education. In Massachusetts, where we do K-12 education really well, what's wrong with that?
Okay, well, first, if there are any members of the King that are here, I just want to say thank you to this incredible learning community. Every single person, thank you for hosting us tonight. Thank you for all the ways that you stand in the gap and take care of our babies. You know, the Department of Education exists so that everyone has a right to free and public education. You know, allegedly, we live in a meritocracy, and education is the great equalizer. Dismantling the Department of Education was laid out in Project 2025. Again, it's one of those things that I think people saw as such a behemoth that there was no way that such a thing could happen. And it cannot happen. A defunding of K through 12 education, devastating. A denial of a right to learn for our special needs students, for our students of every status, of every background, of every zip code, disastrous. A defunding of Head Start, you know, critical low-income child care. There are some 2,600 people in the Massachusetts 7th whose babies are in Head Start. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there are about 11,000 people who use Head Start. So, and then the other thing that I would just say, a dear movement sibling of mine, Reverend Mariama White Hammond, was saying that what we're seeing right now is an assault on data. And maybe everyone can't appreciate why that matters, but that is also a critical attack to note, because a lot of the civil rights protections and gains that we've seen through the Department of Education have to do with data collection. You know, one of the issues I lead on is the criminalization of Black girls in our school and stopping the push-out crisis. I know that 6 out of 9 you know, Black girls dominate those categories and are experiencing disparate expulsion, suspension, and punitive measures because of data. And that is all under the Department of Education. Then finally, we see from the Trump administration, they're weaponizing the Office of Civil Rights. And so this is a devastating, we will feel the impacts of this for generations. And that's why we have to leverage every tool at our disposal to stop this, this dismantling. And I should say the impact will not only be felt in K through 12 education, community colleges will feel the impact of this. They are already feeling a chilling effect because of the people, communities, and families that they uniquely serve. Higher education will also feel this impact. So it is just damning, devastating. It is a shame and a sham that this is all being done under the alleged guise of efficiency. Let me just say something about that. With government, there is bureaucracy. And as someone, as I said, I started out doing constituent casework in the office of a congressman. as a Social Security liaison advocating for our most vulnerable. I get it. If you are waiting on the phone for 4 hours with the VA or hours to hear from the Social Security Administration or the IRS, we should do something about that. We do want government to be more efficient, truly, and to work better for the people. But it is unconstitutional to unilaterally stand up agencies like the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, and then to collapse federal agencies and departments like the Department of Education. That is unconstitutional. Congress is a co-equal branch, and we need to have say and input and oversight of that. So when we say that we are in a constitutional crisis, this is an example of what we mean, that they are just operating with complete lawlessness, and that Elon Musk is leading this charge, an unelected billionaire, not accountable to anyone, with unchecked power. This is why I say we have to fight like hell.
I want to end with two final questions. The first is that you represent Kendall Square, and obviously the federal funding has hurt not just universities, but also NIH research. And I'm wondering, a constituent asked, what you can do to help make sure that Kendall Square and all the things it supports across Massachusetts continues to exist.
Well, I know I pointed out some members of my team. I want to make sure they raise their hands again, and that if you don't know them, you get to know them and get their cards, because I am doing listening sessions throughout the district so that I can better understand what sort of trends are emerging, what are the unique questions that each constituency has. These NIH cuts, again, I hate to be a broken record, but they are devastating. It is an attack on science. It is an attack on innovation. It is an attack on the public health. It is an attack on this workforce. You know, in Massachusetts, we have about 40,000 federal workers, and about 30,000 of those federal workers live in the city of Boston. So they're in my district. And so this is a constituency that I have been vigorous in my advocacy to stop them from being terminated, but if they are terminated, to fight for their reinstatement. And one of those constituents is a young woman named Claire, who lives in Everett, worked for Housing and Urban Development, enforcing fair housing laws, a brilliant attorney who could have taken her talents anywhere, but chose to give back to the people and her government. She was fired she received a pink slip from the Doge Bros on Valentine's Day, when she should have been getting a love letter for her hard work and her impact, because she loved her job and was damn good at it. She's also a wheelchair user, so she's at the intersection of a number of identities. And through court action, her job has been reinstated. So that's why I'm saying, and we just learned that coming into here. So again, for those NIH workers, I just want to say that as much as we care about the impact of their work and their labor, we care just as much about their livelihoods and that workforce. And that's why we have to continue to fight for them. So for Kendall Square, if anyone here can work with my office, I would love to put together a listening session to hear uniquely about that impact and to strategize.
My final question for you tonight, Congresswoman, what gives you hope?
Okay, what gives me hope? Yeah. I know you're going to think it's hokey, I promise you. But maybe I am hokey. I told y'all I'm an Aquarius, so I love a good affirmation. So there's an affirmation that one of my siblings in the movement gifted me during Trump's first occupancy, and I say it every single day, and I want to give it to you because it is in this room, it is in this movement that I find hope. We have to continue to choose community. It's how we fortify one another. And as I said, we need to keep the imagination. So it's not just about radical work, it's about radical dreaming, and it is about radical love. And we're gonna need community in this room and our neighbors more than ever before. So the affirmation I wanna leave with you is the following. I choose the discipline of hope over the ease of cynicism. I choose the discipline of hope over the ease of cynicism. And I choose fortitude over fatalism. So I leave that with you, and I will just say, in the midst of this constitutional crisis, this civil rights crisis where they're coming to roll back gains and progress, and they're coming for every single one of our rights, my appeal to you, I beg of you, is to not give them your joy too.
And with that, thank you very much, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Thank you to everyone joining us here at the Cambridge Street Upper School. Thanks so much to Cambridge Public Schools and everyone online. And for everyone here, please join us for refreshments